3,600-year-old shipwreck uncovered could be the oldest ever found in the Mediterranean. A team of marine archaeologists had uncovered a 3,600-year-old shipwreck in the Mediterranean, just off the coast of Antalya, Turkey. The ship, believed to have been a merchant vessel sailing from Cyprus, may be the oldest ever discovered, according to Haaretz. The wreck was discovered by a team of archaeologists, led by Professor Hakan Onitz, from Akdeniz University, Turkey. Based on its position and the large cargo of copper ingots found inside and around the wreck, it is likely to have been used as a trading ship, ferrying goods from Cyprus to the Aegean region. Although the ship is in very poor condition, and the hull had been almost completely destroyed, the bulk of the ship, together with its precious cargo, has survived, making this a remarkable and extremely rare find. According to an article published in the journal Palestine Exploration Quarterly, the team discovered 73 copper ingots inside the wreck, weighing about 1.5 tons. This immense supply of copper was shaped into pillow-like ingots, characteristic of the Late Bronze Age. The shape of the ingots allowed Onitz to date the wreckage to before 1400 BC, as from this point onwards, copper was transported as oxide ingots, with a particular and distinctive shape. If correct, this dating means the ship is the oldest wreck ever to be found in the Mediterranean, even older than the famous Uluburun shipwreck, found near Kos in southwestern Turkey. Although finds have been salvaged from older wrecks off the coast of Greece, this is potentially the oldest wreck where the ship itself, and not simply its contents, had survived. According to Onitz, the ship shared the fate of many other Mediterranean vessels in antiquity. In order to facilitate navigation, merchant ships would stay close to the coastline. However, this meant that they could easily be driven onto treacherous coastal rocks, particularly in bad weather. Onitz suggests that it is likely that the ship met with a violent storm, although it may have been a victim of war or piracy. Copper was an extremely important and valuable commodity in the Late Bronze Age, and Onitz speculates that the ship could have been traveling to one of a number of destinations in eastern Mediterranean, including Mycenae, Troy, or other important settlements where copper was in high demand for use in weapons manufacture. Other shipwrecks discovered off the coast of Turkey, dating to the Late Bronze Age, have also been found carrying large amounts of copper, and isotope analysis has shown that it was usually mined on the island of Cyprus. Although the ingots from the latest discovery had not yet been analyzed, it is reasonable, due to its position and shape of the copper ingots that it was carrying, to assume that it too was traveling from Cyprus to other destinations in the Mediterranean. In order to avoid any damage to this important and immensely fragile structure, nothing has yet been removed from the site. Instead, according to Haaretz, the team carefully observed and documented the cargo that had been distributed around the site, and then used sonar scanning technology to study the wreck in detail. The analysis showed that more cargo and part of the ship are buried beneath the seabed, which lies around 50 meters or 150 feet below sea level. Onitz and his team are excited about the next stages of their research. According to Haaretz, they hope to raise funding that will allow them to excavate parts of the ship and its contents, and use carbon dating techniques to verify its age. A find of this rarity offers archaeologists a unique insight into Bronze Age maritime traditions, commerce, and seafaring technology, and therefore has the capacity to tell us a great deal about the people and societies that traveled the Mediterranean in the 16th century BC. One thing is certain: this ancient ship holds many more secrets, just waiting to be discovered.
"4,500-year-old cemetery and sarcophagi discovered by Giza pyramids." A 4,500-year-old cemetery has been discovered southeast of the famous Giza pyramids, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities announced this morning. Several tombs and burials were discovered in the cemetery, with one of the oldest tombs holding the remains of two individuals, one named Benu Ka and the other named Nui. Their sarcophagi were found intact and their remains are likely inside. However, no information on them has been released. Analysis of the tomb's artifacts and hieroglyphic inscriptions reveal that the two men lived almost 4,500 years ago, during what historians often call the Fifth Dynasty, at the time the Giza pyramids had been built. According to those inscriptions, Benuka was a priest and judge who held a number of titles, including a lengthy one that calls him the Purifier of Kings. Khafre, Userkaf, and Niaruse. Khafre was a pharaoh who ordered the construction of one of the Giza pyramids, while Userkaf and Niaruse were pharaohs who ruled Egypt during the Fifth Dynasty. Nui also held a number of titles, including Chief of the Great State, the Overseer of the New Settlements, and a Purifier of King Kharafi, according to inscriptions found in the tomb. Analysis of the inscriptions and titles is ongoing. Numerous artifacts were found in the tomb and others in the cemetery, including a limestone statue that may depict either Benuka or Nui, as well as stone engravings and wooden masks. Archaeologists found the cemetery had been reused about 2,600 years ago when several individuals were buried there. Tomb reuse occurred frequently in ancient Egypt. The newly discovered cemetery is located next to a cemetery that held the burials of people who built the Giza pyramids, said Zui Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities, in a statement. An Egyptian archaeological team led by Mustafa Waziri, the Secretary General of the Ministry's Supreme Council of Antiquities, discovered the cemetery. Research at the new cemetery is ongoing, with new discoveries likely.
A 4,500-year-old stone pillar depicts history's first known border dispute. A border pillar, shoved into the ground some 4,500 years ago, in what is now southern Iraq, underscores that the fact that disputes over territory are as old as civilization itself. For 150 years, the British Museum's collection has included the Lagash border pillar, a stone white pillar that King Edmentina of Lagash had erected to mark his territory in 2400 BC, and its glistening surface would have shone out brightly and assertively under the sun beating down on the plain. Recently, the inscription of the pillar was translated, and its aggressive language showed the struggle to create a no-man's land between the kingdoms of Umma and Lagash in Mesopotamia. According to the Smithsonian, the fight between Umma and Lagash is one of the oldest known wars in human history, and led to what may be the world's first peace treaty and one of the oldest legal documents, the Treaty of Mizilim, signed around 2550 BC. The treaty set up a border that was demarcated with a stele along an irrigation canal, similar to the one on view in the museum. It is the focus of a new exhibit at the British Museum called No Man's Land, wrote the Financial Times. No Man's Land is the latest in a series of tightly focused displays staged in the single-room space that lies immediately to your right as you pass through a museum's portico. The translation on the pillar includes dire warnings for anyone who dares step over the boundary. The translation seems to warn that if the gods don't stomp on you, poisonous snakes will finish you off. Over 4,500 years ago, Lagash and Umma, neighboring states, fought bitterly over a fertile tract of land called Gu-Edina. The ancient objects showcased here document the perspectives of the opposing sides, with both territories invoking divine sanction and precedent to justify their claim over the land, the museum says. Alongside the stone pillar in the British Museum stands the Umma mace head that was made for King Gishekadu of Umma, who was Edmentina's enemy and his contemporary. Long regarded as a vase, is now understood that this is a symbolic mace head, which has always been displayed upside down, until now, the museum says. On top of the mace head is a black painted representation of the battle net that was used by the gods to immobilize enemies for execution. The plaque is also on display in this show, and illustrates a tradition followed by the Lagash and Umma, in which offerings were made at the border shrine under the protective eye of the moon god. The Smithsonian said this wasn't just a roadside sign marking Lagash's territory. It is a heavily inscribed object, telling the complete story of the war between the two cities over the land. It also includes what may be the earliest known example of written wordplay. Whoever chiseled the pillar didn't just take pains to emphasize the name of the Lagash god, Ningirusu, substituting some of the cuneiform marks in the name with the symbol for God. They also threw some shade on the rival god of Umma, writing the god's name in a messy, almost illegible script. Irving Finkel, a curator in the Middle East department who deciphered the Sumerian cuneiform writing, told the Financial Times, "You have in one breath the use of writing in a magical way to enhance the power of one deity and then nullify the power of the other. This is a unique cuneiform. It is the most exciting thing you can imagine." The museum display, No Man's Land, brings to light the fragility of borders throughout history. The ancient and contemporary works exhibited addresses the issues around the human desire to dominate land, and allude to the brutality and turmoil borders that have invoked on those lands that inhabit them, as well as the landscape itself, said the British Museum. Dazzling 500-million-year-old fossilized brain baffles and astounds scientists. A prehistoric fossilized brain is baffling and exciting scientists. Ever since archaeology became a respected scientific discipline, teams have uncovered everything from tools to tombs, skeletons of man, and bones belonging to dinosaurs, animals, and long-extinct species like woolly mammoths. But actual organs have been elusive, largely because organic matter simply can't be preserved, so it will last for any length of time. Whether they belong to human or animal or marine life, organs are made of organic material and simply break down eventually. Brain matter specifically has been so susceptible to decay that even the ancient Egyptians, masters of mummification and body preservation, usually removed the brain before beginning the procedure, except the heart. Often, the heart has been found in Egyptian mummies, but only rarely has a brain been found. New evidence, however, is giving researchers, archaeologists, and other experts a glimmer of hope that perhaps brains don't always decay, that perhaps some fossilized brains still exist somewhere, in rock formations or burial sites not yet discovered. The reason for this new optimism is a study done by 3 scientists at Harvard University, who have been examining brain and central nervous system matter in a Cambrian fossil. Findings from their study were recently published by the Royal Society of Bee, a scholarly journal. A team studied a small Cambrian creature whose formal scientific name is Alacumineush, a type of 500-million-year-old arthropod, or insect. Experts say that, while this little being may have been tiny, its exoskeleton was strong enough to shield it from deterioration. The team said this was an unusual abundance of exceptionally preserved animal and plant life in Cambrian deposits, which capture details of the non-materialized anatomy that would normally be lost to decay. In other words, the material that surrounded this little entity in death kept its brain matter from wholly disintegrating, as normally happens with man, animal, or insect. This creature's brain was not remotely like a human's, of course, but the fact that it endured at all is startling. The brain of the prehistoric creature was more of a central nervous system, with elongated brain structures that ran from its head to its upper back. Neural tissue connected the creature's 4 eyes and 4 pairs of segmented nerves. More nerves from the brain extended all the way down its backside. This system of nerves appeared as a dark stain on the specimen, but because neural tissue is rich in carbon, the traces of carbon in that stain gave it away as a brain fossilized for an estimated, and absolutely amazing, 500 million years. The findings have dazzled archaeologists, paleontologists, and other researchers who have historically assumed that all brain matter of all beings decays after death. No matter how sophisticated the burial, fossilization, or mummification, brains have commonly been thought to wither and sink back into the earth from whence they came. In fact, experts believe that the process of decay began long before any preservation processes could have been started, which may explain why Egyptians tossed them away. But the findings at Harvard have shown that depending on the environment in which the brain is kept, that decay might just be stopped. The Harvard experts are hopeful that their findings will lead other scientists to stop drawing conclusions about what may, or may not, happen to the brain when its host dies. Our study represents, their report begins, to our knowledge, that the first case of consistent anatomical organization of the exceptionally preserved CNS, and continues on to note that the expert should, gravitate away from the preconception that nervous tissue is too easily altered to become fossilized, as evidence keeps accumulating that neurological preservation is possible under certain conditions. Getting other scientists and experts to reconsider their long-held point of view may be difficult, but the team hopes that, in light of their new evidence, open minds will prevail. "9,000-year-old stone mask gives face to ancient culture."
It is a very, very exciting find for an archaeologist to hold in his hand. It's not common at all.
9,000 years ago, during the Neolithic period, culture in the Pnihever region was undergoing a fundamental shift from being a hunter-gatherer society to an agricultural society. Not only did the change mean profound differences in how the people of the time fed themselves, the agricultural revolution also meant many major shifts in how society as a whole shaped itself with regard to social structures, and it included an increase in religious, ritual activity among the artifacts from that time, which have helped archaeologists learn about those social structures in a recently discovered stone mask. A subsequent investigation of the information revealed that it came from Pnihever. Other such masks have been discovered, but they are very rare. Only 15 other examples have been known to exist prior to this find, and of those 15, not all of them have been in good condition, and the specific places they've been found in aren't known for certain. The mask is a unique find in the archaeological world. It is even more unusual that we know which site it came from. The fact that we have information regarding the specific place in which it was discovered makes this mask more important than most other masks from this period of which we currently know. The mask is carved from pinkish yellow limestone and made to resemble a human face. 4 holes drilled around its edges on opposite sides suggest that it was meant to be tied onto someone's head or some other object. Lupu expressed the excitement over the quality of the find, describing it as being very finished. The stone was quite smooth all over, and the facial features were symmetrical. There were teeth carved around the mouth of the mask, and it boasted a nose she called impressive. The IAA Archaeological Research Department says that the masks, along with other artifacts such as human-shaped figurines and plaster skulls, are linked to the area's burgeoning agricultural revolution, and they all reflect that ancestor worship was common in that place and time. Scholars connect the masks to ancestor worship because they are so close in size to actual human faces. Such artifacts are believed to have ritual significance and be part of the maintenance and remembrance of family heritage. Archaeologists have found skulls buried under the floors of ancient dwellings too, as well as seeing several methods of shaping and caring for the skulls of the dead, which all seem to support this idea. According to National Geographic, the precise role such masks played in the culture of the time remains unclear. Alan Simmons from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, says that while the mask, and others like it, may well be related to ancestor worship, we don't know it for certain. Their use could be part of funeral rituals or some other sort of ritual, or could simply be decorative or celebratory. Many of the unknowns are because of the vast majority of the masks that have been discovered are in private collections, making them impossible to seriously study, and their provenance may be a little murky. Being able to place an artifact in its geographical context may not be significant, though. York Rowan, a professor of archaeology at the University of Chicago, discussed that even if the general geographic location is known, that still doesn't provide necessary context. Context comes from studies of what else the piece was with, which may give clues about how it was used. If the mask was found in what was obviously a burial site or some other sort of ritual context, that would give a much clearer idea of an object's meaning and use. IAA has conducted a preliminary isotopic or mineralogical study of the site where the mask was said to be found, and preliminary results were consistent, but no in-depth excavation has been done as of yet. This leads some scholars to at least consider that the find's authenticity may be suspect, and to point out that the finish on the mask could be replicated on a counterfeit. But Lupu disagrees. I'm sure that this is the context for the find. I think when we publish the final analysis of the mask, it will be a done deal, she said.
Before we start, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe to Blast World Mysteries, and hit the bell icon so you'll never miss these great stories.
The mysterious carvings in the Royston Cave. Royston is a town in the district of North Hertfordshire in England. One of the landmarks of this little town is the Royston Cave, which is hidden beneath Melbourne Street. The cave was accidentally discovered in 1742 by a workerman who was trying to make footings for a new bench for a market. He found a milestone under the surface of the ground, and when he lifted the milestone, he found a shaft leading into the chalk. The first one who entered the hole was a young boy. He was lowered into the cavity by a rope and found that instead of a network of tunnels, there was just a bell-shaped cavity. The cave was filled with dirt and rock. It was emptied quickly, uncovering the strange carvings in the lower part of the chamber. Unfortunately, the soil which contained human bones and fragments of pottery was never analyzed. The original entrance was closed, and another entrance was made by a bricklayer named Thomas Watson. His house was just opposite the cave, and so he dug a 22-meter-long tunnel between his house and the cave, and started to charge 6 pence for each visit. This entrance is still used today. Many historians visited the cave and gave their theories about its origin. Some think that the Knight Templars used the cave as a secret meeting place. Other historians claim that the carvings contain Masonic symbols that could link the caves to James I, who was himself a Freemason and who maintained a hunting lodge at Royston. According to other studies, the cave may simply have been a hermitage or prison. Another theory is that the cave was used as an Augustinian storehouse. However, there is very little hard evidence to support these theories. The carvings on the walls have a medieval appearance, and it seemed that they had initially been colored. But at the time of their discovery, only small traces of color were visible. Most of the carvings have a religious connotation. Below the original entrance is carved St. Christopher. On the west part of the wall are St. Catherine and St. Lawrence, and next to St. Lawrence are 3 figures of a man, woman, and child that are believed to be Joseph, Mary, and Jesus. There is also a figure of St. George, the patron saint of England. There is a long row of figures, but not all can be identified. Among the multitude of carvings, there is a disembodied head, which might represent John the Baptist, and others which represent the Holy Sepulchre and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Above the sepulchre is a symbol of the Holy Spirit, the arm of God that releases a dove. The 2 small figures of a man and woman are carved below St. Catherine. Above the woman, there is a floating crown. It is believed that these figures represent Richard I, the Lionheart, and his wife, Berengaria. Berengaria was never officially crowned Queen of England, which explains why the crown is floating above, but not on her head. There are many other carvings which cannot be identified. It is still unknown who carved the walls of the cave and for what purpose. Today, the cave is owned by the town council and open for public visits.
The high-tech stonework of the ancients. Unsolved mysteries of master engineers. Before we start, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe to Blast World Mysteries, and hit the bell icon so you'll never miss these great stories. There are many stone artifacts from the ancient world made from the hardest stone on the planet, such as granite and diorite, which have been cut and shaped with such quality, precision, and accuracy that the standard explanations of their manufacture are slightly inadequate. Take the granite sarcophagus in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, for example, which has been hollowed out with such absolute precision that famed English Egyptologist Flinders Petrie firmly believed that the craftsmen present during Khufu's reign must have had access to tools, such as we ourselves have only now reinvented. Petrie was dumbfounded by the anomalous modern stone-cutting techniques on show in Egypt and wrote, "The character of the work would certainly seem to point to diamond as being the cutting jewel, and only the considerations of its rarity in general and its absence from Egypt interfere with this conclusion." Questioning the quality and immensity of ancient stonework. The presence of such bizarrely fashioned stones, dating back nearly 5,000 years, still remains a conundrum today, At the supposed dawn of human civilization, more than 4,500 years ago, the ancient Egyptians had acquired what sounded like industrial age drills. It isn't just the quality of the cutting which has baffled researchers, but the sheer immensity of some of the stones used to build the many monumental constructions has caused scholarly debate for centuries. And even today, the experts struggle to explain how some of these massive blocks were cut, shifted, and placed so perfectly into place. We're talking of such enigmatic archaeological sites as Balbach in Lebanon, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, and Machu Picchu in Peru, Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia, Easter Island, Stonehenge in England, and of course the Great Pyramids and temples of Egypt, to name but a few. These structures all exhibit signs of engineering skills which should not have been possible in such ancient times with the tools and knowledge which orthodox academics insist were available to them. We see evidence of heavy lifting which cannot be done today with the world's largest cranes and holes and cavities in the hardest rock on Earth that only diamond-tipped saws of the modern era should be capable of producing. How was any of this possible? The puzzling case of the Sphinx. As Hancock remarks in The Message of the Sphinx, what we may be looking at here are the fingerprints of highly sophisticated and perhaps even technological people, capable of awe-inspiring architectural and engineering feats at a time when no civilization of any kind is supposed to have existed anywhere on Earth. On the Giza Plateau in front of the Great Sphinx are two temples built from the same limestone rock which was carved out of the horseshoe-shaped enclosure in which sits the Sphinx itself. Both the so-called Sphinx Temple and the Valley Temple of Khafre are built from massive limestone core blocks, which were once fitted with granite casings inside and out. Bewilderingly, the builders of these ancient and anonymous temples chose to stack stones of immense proportions, some of which are 30 feet, 9.14 meters long, 12 feet, 3.66 meters wide, and 10 feet, 3.05 meters high, and weigh in the region of 200 tons each. Even the smallest stones were still a mighty 50 tons apiece. Now, the questions that arise today, aside from how did these early civilizations manage to haul around such incredibly large stones, must be why. It would be so much easier to build with smaller blocks or bricks like we do in modern times. But for some unknown reason, our ancestors chose the difficult option, confounding us with their capabilities. What they've succeeded in doing, apart from leaving behind physical evidence of their existence, is confounding us with their capabilities, with the mysteries of the master engineers remaining unsolved. To get a sense of the sheer size and weight of a 200-ton block, we can compare its dimensions to a locomotive train, which as a general rule of thumb weighs in at 30 to 35 tons per axle, with the average 4-axle locomotive around 125 tons, and a 6-axle locomotive around 200 tons. Imagine stacking the largest of these trains on top of one another. It would be a logistical nightmare. The standard cranes that we see in our cities on large construction sites can generally hoist a maximum load of 20 tons when the crane arm is at a minimum span, but whilst outstretched to its maximum will only lift around 5 tons. Special cranes are required to lift loads exceeding 50 tons, with the most equipped cranes capable of dealing with a 200-ton load being few and far between. Only 2 land-based cranes in the United States are presently capable of such a feat. Built with structural steel members and powered with massive electric motors, the majority of these cranes have a load limit of under 100 tons, writes Hancock, and a commission to put together a temple out of 200-ton blocks would be a most unusual and very taxing job, even for modern heavy load and crane specialists. According to Egyptologists, the stones were raised 50 feet, 15.24 meters above the ground into position by employing a combination of ramps, levers, and ropes alongside a huge amount of manpower. But mystified by conventional explanations, John Anthony West sought answers and visited a Long Island construction site to see for himself precisely how a 200-ton weight could really be shifted. It took 20 men working for 6 weeks to even prepare to lift a 200-ton boiler using one of the largest cranes in existence, with a 220-foot or 67.06 meter high boom and a counterweight made of concrete weighing an incredible 160 tons. A second crane was then brought in to precisely fit the boiler in place. It's a mystery at Balbach, too. Discussing the construction of the Valley and Sphinx temples, Chief Engineer Jesse Warren commented, Seeing how they moved these heavy 200-ton blocks, possibly thousands and thousands of years ago, I have no idea how they did this job. It's a mystery, and it'll probably always be a mystery to me. In the Bekaa Valley north of Beirut lie the remains of the ancient Phoenician city of Balbach, meaning Lord Baal of the Bekaa Valley. Once referred to as Heliopolis, or the City of the Sun, in what is now modern-day Lebanon, in the ancient world as early as 9000 BC, although time may reveal the site to be much older, Baalbek became an important pilgrimage site for the worship of the Phoenician sky god Baal and his consort Astarte, the Queen of Heaven. At the heart of the city stood a grand temple dedicated to Astarte and Baal, which today consists of 5 million square foot platform, built using some of the largest stones ever shaped by human hands. This immense ancient platform became the foundation of the later Roman temple complex, which includes 3 separate temples dedicated to Jupiter, Bacchus, and Venus, respectively. The stones used at this site are so enormous that they make the 200-ton blocks seen at the Giza temples look like toy bricks in comparison. Some of the blocks in the wall are around 400 tons each, while the 3 hewn stones, known as the trilithon, which lay in the base of the Jupiter Baal temple ruins, each weigh an estimated 800 tons. Officially, scholars attribute the shifting and cutting of these monstrous monoliths to the Romans circa 27 BC. But many researchers contest this idea, suggesting instead that they're remnants of some other ancient civilization from a far earlier epoch altogether, in keeping with the material positioned in J.P. Robinson's book, The Myth of Man, Hidden History and the Ancient Origins of Humankind. Hancock is one such dissident. The moving and positioning of 3 800-ton megaliths to a height of 18 or 20 feet above the ground is, as the case at Baalbek, a problem of a completely different order. I suggest this requires careful consideration rather than simply saying the Romans did it, as archaeology is at present inclined to do. The combined weight of the entire base at Baalbek is estimated to be around 5 billion tons. Were the Romans capable of shifting such an amount of stone? It's hard to imagine, and no other evidence of Roman construction anywhere else supports such a theory. The largest stones ever unearthed. A stone quarry site can be found not too far from the ruins, and it's here where the largest stones ever unearthed were discovered. Sticking out of the ground at a slight angle, a limestone monolith was named Hajar al-Hibla in Arabic, or the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, was found, which weighs at approximately 1,200 tons, or 6 locomotives. Archaeologists agree that this huge monolith was left in the quarry simply because the quality of the stone block's edge proved too poor to transport, as it could too easily be damaged. In 2014, the Oriental Department of the German Archaeological Institute conducted more excavation work in the stone quarry, trying to find new data about the mining techniques and the transportation of the megaliths. But what they found was an even larger monolith directly beside the first one, which had been beneath the ground until that summer. Measuring an astonishing 64 feet, 19.6 meters in length, 19.6 feet, 6 meters wide, and 18 feet, 5.5 meters high, this unbelievable find weighs 1,650 tons, nearly 1.5 million kilos, and is now the biggest known ancient stone rock anywhere in the world. The archaeologists also concluded that due to the block's configuration and levels of smoothness, it was most certainly being readied for transportation without being cut, and at an altitude of around 3,838.58 feet, 1,170 meters. Following the discovery of the second monolith, Hancock wrote, "I believe these huge megaliths long predate the construction of the Temple of Jupiter and are likely to be 1,200 or more years old, contemporaneous with the megalithic site of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. I suggest we're looking at the handiwork of the survivors of a lost civilization, that the Romans built their Temple of Jupiter on a pre-existing 12,000-year-old megalithic foundation, and that they were unaware of the giant hewn megaliths in the ancient quarry, as these were covered by sediment in Roman times, as indeed the newly discovered block still was until very recently. It remains unexplained how the Romans, or whoever was actually responsible for such an astounding feat of engineering, quarried, cut, and transported the megaliths of Baalbek. And another mystery is why they left the largest blocks in situ. The mainstream answer is that they were simply too heavy to maneuver, so they were left in the ground. But they succeeded in shifting the 800-ton trilithon blocks, so why not the others? Even if they decided they were beyond the limits of engineering capabilities, surely they could have cut them up into smaller, more manageable blocks in order to complete the temple constructions. It's really puzzling that they didn't do so, and therefore the fact that these gigantic, almost finished blocks remain in the quarry and were never sliced up into smaller blocks and used in the general construction of the Temple of Jupiter suggests to me very strongly that the Romans did not even know they were there, explains Hancock. Super megaliths in Siberia. We may never know the answers to these questions, but we can still conjecture as to the technological means in maneuvering the megalithic stones left around the world, which continue to perplex us with mystery. More recent discoveries have revealed even more megalithic stones, this time in southern Siberia, near the mountains of Gornaya Shoria. Georgy Sidorov found and photographed the super megaliths for the first time on an expedition to the southern Siberian mountains in 2014. There are no accurate measurements given as of yet, but judging from the scale depicted by the human figures in some of the photographs, these Siberian megaliths, hewn from granite, could prove to be twice the weight of the largest known megaliths found at Balbach, possibly in the region of between 3,000 and 4,000 tons each. How many more such discoveries lie in wait across the globe? And at what weight will these astoundingly immense stones reach? Reports of the 2014 expedition claim that the geologists encountered some unexplained problems with their compasses when the arrows began deviating away from the megalithic blocks. It's been suggested that they may have experienced inexplicable phenomena of a negative geomagnetic field, leading to notions of the possible use of ancient anti-gravity technologies unknown to modern science.